Morgan's favorite part was about the corn and the cows because she loves cows.
I love cows. I do. They're just precious animals. I still eat them, but...
Yo guys, welcome back. This is Everything Bar and Service, and today we're going to be checking out St. Augustine's own distillery. Check it out, guys.
I just met them kids, but in my friends I trust. They goddamn this shit, it get the best of us. Got a tendency to drink too much. 27 burning, I've been swerving at the burgers, I don't need too much. Yeah, brother told me never ever settle on a purpose, we agreed that much. Putting every feeling I've been feeling in the verse, I believe that much. I believe that much, I believe that much. Got a tendency to drink too much. Yeah, 20 minutes later, sipping Hennessy and telling me I think too much. I just met them kids, but in my friends I trust. They goddamn this shit, it get the best of us. The best of us, best of us. Hey, tendencies, casualties. Tendencies, casualties. Tendencies, casualties. Tendencies, casualties.
Hey, my name's Doug. Now make that dog behave, okay?
He's better than people.
Oh.
He's better than people.
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you.
All right, guys, my name's Doug, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this old building. It's pretty interesting, and a little bit about our company, and then we're going to head out here, and I'm going to show you how we make bourbon. And then from there, we'll head down to the barrels, and we'll talk about the barrels and the aging process, because that's a big part of making bourbon. And then from there, we're going to go into the tasting room. You hear me? We're going to the tasting room, guys. It was a pretty good cook. I didn't know whether you knew this or not, but almost every still in America is named after a lady. Okay. Well, Betsy's going to cook everything. You know, if you have a pan on the stove and you're cooking something, you have a lid on the pan, you'll notice the water gathers on the inside of the lid from evaporation. And here's what we want from this cooking is evaporation. Alcohol evaporates much faster than water does, so as the alcohol evaporates, it goes up the big copper tube here, comes over to this silver tube, and when it's coming down the silver tube, it's turning into a liquid. It's a clear liquid. Now, if we were operating this still, that glass bowl at the bottom of the silver there would fill up with a clear liquid. Now, we're a small handcrafted distillery. Heck, everything's done by hand here. The only way that we know when this is ready to move on to the next step is one of our distillers comes out here about every 15 minutes, and he takes a small glass of it and tastes it and smells it. And only by taste and smell do we know when it's ready to move on to the next step, and they might have to do that a couple times. I actually started here as a taster. I started one morning at 9:30 in the morning as a taster. They called Uber and sent me home around 11. But anyway, when it's ready, they'll move it over to this still, and this still's Ella, after Ella Fitzgerald. Ella Fitzgerald was a very refined singer, and this is our refining still. When the refining process ends up in there, it's in three parts, and we call it the head, the heart, and the tail. The head that's in there at the end of refining is like acetone. It's like fingernail polish remover. Brutal stuff. The tail that's left in there is like old soggy cardboard. But the heart of it, through our proprietary method, we pull the heart out of Ella. That's what goes in the barrel, and that's the beginning of the bourbon. What about bourbon is all bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey's bourbon, okay? They used to make all kind of things in America and call it bourbon, but in 1964, Congress actually passed a law and said this is what's going to be bourbon. Congress said it's going to be A, B, and C. The A stands for America. Bourbon can only be made in America. You can't make whiskey in Ireland or Scotland or Canada or any place else in the world and call it bourbon. Bourbon is America's drink, much like champagne is for France. Now the B stood for in the ABC stood for the barrel. Every batch of bourbon has to go into a brand new white oak charred barrel. And the C stood for the corn content. They said it had to be at least 51% corn. Ours is actually 60% corn, 22% red winter wheat, and 18% of barley. Just as an afterthought, you're drinking bourbon, you're getting your vegetables, right? Well, I got a question for you guys. You want to try some of this stuff? Yeah. Hey, it's 5 o'clock. Let's go to the bar.
He's better than people.
If you'll look over here on the blackboard, we're going to make you 3 cocktails before you go up to the bourbon bar. We're going to make you a Florida Mule using vodka. We're going to make a rum tiki cocktail and a hibiscus spritz using our gin. Each one of the drinks that you have here today are going to be the same formula or same recipe. 1 part of our spirit, 1 part of our own mix, and 2 parts of bubble water or seltzer water. I'm going to start off with the vodka. The vodka that we have here, remember I told you, is made out of sugar cane. Now this vodka is going to be 80 proof. If you need a reason to drink vodka, I got it for you. It's gluten-free. All right. So guys, I want you to come on up and enjoy a Florida Mule with our 80 proof sugar cane vodka.
Enjoyed the cocktails he had for you. And I also want to take the opportunity on behalf of the owners to thank you for paying us a visit, being out supporting local business. So hopefully you liked our spirits, our cocktails. Maybe you'll take some of our spirits and mixers home with you. But first, we got to get to that bourbon. Any bourbon fans here today?
Now guys, on your tour you learned all about the Florida Straight Bourbon, bottled at 88 proof after aging 3 years in our beautiful Florida climate year-round. So we're going to make this into a classic cocktail known as the Old Fashioned. Now it is such a classic that when it was first invented, it was simply called the cocktail. And it was basically just a glass of spirit that you would add muddled up sugars, bitters, and citrus to kind of bring out more of those flavors. So I want to go ahead and start by saying, on your path to bourbon enlightenment, so many people are going to try to tell you how you should drink your bourbon. And if you listen closely, you'll actually be able to hear them say, I'm incredibly bored and should find myself a hobby. People ask me every single day, how should I drink this? How do people normally drink? I don't know. I'm not following them into their house. Use your mouth, right? That's how you drink it. So all we really care about is that you get your daily dose of vegetables. You want to sip it neat, you sip it neat. You want to mix it, you don't use a bad bourbon. But you also don't use artificial ingredients. Now we are using a bottled old-fashioned mix today, but it is all natural. You don't introduce all those chemicals and flavors and colors and sweeteners to a beverage or a spirit that doesn't allow the use of such things. So this is all natural. Florida cane sugar, molasses, gentian roots, cinchona bark, orange peel, and water. Very flavorful, aged in our used bourbon barrels, so we only need 1 part of the mix. And how many ounces are in 1 part? That's right, doesn't matter at all. Statistically, one of you is going to go home and try to use a bucket. That's fine, call me though. So 1 part of the mix to 1 part of our Florida Straight Bourbon. Now the Old Fashioned is known as a bourbon forward cocktail, but 1 to 1 doesn't really let us achieve that. So we're going to go ahead and go with 2 parts bourbon. There we go. So 2 parts bourbon officially makes this cocktail bourbon forward. So now we are ready for 3 parts. Here we go. There we go. All right, guys. Indeed, woo. Okay. So 3 parts bourbon. Now, guys, just like with all of our other mixes, we've written down the recipe right there on the label of mix. So if you want to follow this when you go home, you are more than welcome to add a 4th part, because that's what it says. Here we go for. No woo that time. Where's? There we go. All right. I was getting worried. You okay? Okay. So, guys, that is actually following the recipe right there on the label of the mix. But of course, when you go home, do you have to follow this? No. No. The whole reason that we do these tastings is because it is all subjective. It's your palate. Some of us are going to want to bring out the sweetness in bourbon. You add just a little bit more mix. Some of us are going to want to bring out the oak qualities, the grain, get that really nice bourbon intensity. So you go 20 parts bourbon makes a beautiful old fashioned, guys. Anybody tries to keep you from doing that has overstayed their welcome, clearly. So now we just need to add some ice. Now another great thing about the old fashioned is that it never covers up the bourbon. That's what so many people are worried about. If you mix good bourbon, you'll ruin it. You'll cover it up. You'll mask the flavor. No, the only way to cover up bourbon flavor is to not use bourbon. So if you use bourbon in a cocktail, that is what it's going to showcase. Don't be afraid to let the bourbon out of the cage, right? Let it open up. Let yourself experience a different side of this already very flavorful spirit, guys. So that is all natural old-fashioned right there. Remember, it is 80% bourbon, so it's a sipper. You only shoot the things that you don't want to taste, so take it slowly. And when you're done with your cups, you can throw the cups away because they're made of corn, not plastic, therefore totally biodegradable. If you guys are waiting for an orange peel, it's already in the mix. So go ahead and grab them. There we go. There we go. Grab and slide, guys. Grab your sample, slide out of the way.
Get those old fashions. If you've never had an old fashioned, you're in for a treat.
Whoa, whoa,
whoa, whoa.
You said that before.
I heard that.
That's insane. What are you from? It's a product of themselves.
Wait, what'd you say? Oh, we're playing now. Awesome. So we just got out of the distillery. We just got out. We didn't drive around the town for 10 minutes doing this already.
It's our first try. We don't do outtakes.
We don't do the outtakes.
Professionals.
But anyways, so the St. Augustine Distillery, as we know, was a good time. Our guy Doug that was doing the tour was very informative.
Yo, I'm telling you about the gym.
Yep. Morgan's favorite part was about the corn and the cows because she loves cows.
I love cows. I do. They're just precious animals. I still eat them, but should I not say that?
Morgan eats cows. And that's Everything Bar and
If
Service.
I tasted as good as cows did, I would expect cows to eat me. The same way. Well,
shit.
maybe not.
Back to the St. Augustine Distillery.
Should I reset it?
No, keep it going.
No, let's just let everyone see how stupid we are.
That's fine. That's what people want to watch.
Thanks, guys. I don't care about how you actually are as a person. I want to see you up.
So we are currently driving around St. Augustine, downtown St. Augustine.
Historic downtown, which is just a short distance away from the distillery. It's not in the immediate historic district, but it's just a quick walk
And every
away.
time you say downtown St. Augustine, all you want to say kind of like downtown St. Augustine.
Downtown!
No.
Nope, bad. Sorry. Nope, not doing that.
Downtown
Braden's
St.
the
Augustine.
singer here. I'm not allowed to do it.
No, that's not a singer thing. It's just downtown
I
St.
thought you were singing
Augustine.
the Macklemore song.
No, it's more of a Sean Connery type of way you say it, you know.
Oh, okay. Say it again.
Downtown St. Augustine.
No.
You say it like that.
Downtown. No.
Downtown St. Augustine, Florida.
Downtown.
Downtown St. Augustine, Florida. Downtown.
Stop.
Too much. 27 burning, I've been swerving at the burgers, I don't need too much. Yeah. Father told me never ever settle on a purpose, we agreed that much. Putting every feeling I've been feeling in the verse, I believe that much. I believe that much, I believe that much. Got a tendency to drink too much.
If you've never had an old fashioned, you're in for a treat. Whoa, whoa,